You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
Morning glory, America. It's the eve of the New Hampshire primary, and Joe Biden is back on the trail.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
And he is really doing the best he can to bring voters around.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
By insulting the voters.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
By using references that are obscure to everyone.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
And by claiming he's taken out of
soldier.
context. Look, I have no idea what he's talking about. Apparently earlier he was talking about a John Wayne movie. Joe, go home. The voters are going to send you home tomorrow. Lots to talk about today. Let me begin with the Oscars. Parasite, I gather, won everything. I went to bed, right, after Best Supporting Actress, because I got to get up at Dark 100. And I said, okay, see you later. Hoping that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood wins and hoping that Antonio Banderas pulls it out for Pain and Glory. Knowing full well that Joaquin Phoenix was going to win for Joker. I knew that, but Antonio Banderas, it's a wonderful, fine, beautiful movie, Pain and Glory. It's not for everybody. It's rated R, and it will shock the little old people out there who haven't ever seen a attractive representation of same-sex love, but they will nevertheless they'll just think Antonio Banderas struggling with age and infirmity will be amazing. So he should have won, but he didn't win. We knew Joaquin Phoenix would win. But what I did not expect to wake up to was Parasite winning everything. I saw Parasite last week with the fetching Mrs. Hewitt, who had to leave. How often does someone have to leave a movie? And the reason she had to leave is it's so dark. Like the darkest movie ever. Sonny Bunch must be happy this morning. Let me start with a couple of coronavirus stories because you're not going to like this. The only people that are going to like this are Amazon, Secure Space. I'm invested in both of those companies. I own Amazon stock. I made an investment in Secure Space. Companies that are going to thrive on the fact that people will self-isolate in the face of a pandemic in Europe and maybe in America. And people who are going to help with disruption in supply chain. The former is Amazon, the latter is Secure Space. And Secure Space is spelled without the E. S-E-C-U-R space, Secure Space. They, when you've got 1,000 sinks sitting around somewhere and you hadn't planned on them arriving early or late, Secure Space finds you a place to put them. So anyone who deals with supply chain disruption, like Secure Space, or anybody who deals with, the end of shopping, are going to like the next two stories, but the world isn't going to like the next two stories. Coronavirus is getting worse. It has now got 40,000 cases, 910 deaths, 3,344 recovered. Now, I had an official tell me over the weekend, think 10x when dealing with the PRC, meaning the numbers could be 10 times as high. So 40,000 cases would become 400,000 cases. 900 deaths could become 9,000 deaths. 3,000 recovered could be 30,000 recovered. Now, I don't think we're going to have an epidemic like 1918, where if the equivalent number of people died, it would be between 1.75 and 2 million Americans. It would be between 60 and 150 million worldwide. I don't think so. The reason because we have better science. Once we get the virus isolated, all of the world's scientific apparatus will go after it. We'll capture it, contain it, kill it, and find a vaccination after about 18 months. But it's going to be bumpy along the way. And what I keep telling people is, what you've got to remember, the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, 90 million of them run the PRC. Within the CCP are a lot of people who take bribes. It's very corrupt. So if you are sick or feeling sick or you want to get the hell out of Wuhan or maybe out of mainland China, there will be people whose palms you can grease. Secondly, there are ideologues within the CCP, think the descendants of the Gang of Four, who hate the United States enough that they'll turn the other way when infected people leave the country. Now, they can't come to the United States right now thanks to Donald Trump, who has acted quickly and decisively to close the borders to people coming from China. But it ain't going to necessarily work for one reason. I got to read you this story. Hong Kong police on the hunt for 2 people who escaped coronavirus quarantine. They have issued arrest warrants for the escapees, even as the total number of cases in Hong Kong climbs to 38, including 10 members of one family. Oops. So you see, people will want to get the hell out of there. And they're going to want to go where? Where do you think they're going to want to go? They want to go to Los Angeles, Silicon Valley, New York, and Washington, D.C., the 4 great centers of medicine research in the world. That's it. There are other great places. Like, I mean, if you have a heart attack, you want to go to the Cleveland Clinic. If you've got cancer, you want to go to MD Anderson in Houston. I know all that. But you definitely want to make a break for the United States if you're going to come down with a killer flu. Now, in the United Kingdom, we've got 4 new cases confirmed, and the United Kingdom has declared the disease a serious and imminent threat. And this is beginning now. Here's the other thing you got to know. I'm just giving you all the bad news up front, then I'll give you the good news. The Spanish flu of 1918, which was so deadly, which was just the flu, it was just influenza. It could have been a coronavirus, for all I can remember. All I remember is it first appeared in April of 1918, I believe in Kansas. And then it went through what are called passages, where it attacks, it adapts, it moves on. So 12 different times. It attacked, it killed, and it moved on. It got more and more and more dangerous. They got 60 new coronaviruses, by the way, on the quarantine cruise. So those people are having a wonderful time on that ship. Pray for them. But during the 1918 epidemic that killed so many people, a virus, the influenza, mutated at least a dozen times, maybe as many as 20 times. By the way, there's 1 case in Massachusetts, 6 cases in California. It's it's going to spread everywhere over the weekend. I'm trying to tell you about this so you don't panic, just so you know. The good news is science will find the antivirals that will cure it. We'll find it here first. Eventually, we will mass produce them. I don't own Gilead Sciences, but I think Gilead's the one that makes the drug that works. It's too late to the party to buy that. Maybe not. Maybe later in the day I'll call up my broker and say, Gilead's going to really take off. I don't own Gilead. I've got to look at that. But they'll eventually figure it out in the United States, but it's going to have a worldwide disruption on the economy. A virus like this, a pandemic, takes 2 tolls. One, in human suffering, and that's the highest toll. If you know anything about the 1918 epidemic, it was so bad they were stacking up bodies like cordwood in Philadelphia. Bodies were hanging around apartments. They ran out of caskets. People were stealing caskets. And it's just a nightmare all over the world. We could have that, but the good news is we got science is racing ahead, better off this way. We do not know its morbidity or its mortality yet. We don't know. The Chinese, they're not telling us. They're not telling us. They say they're telling us, but yesterday they had the foreign minister on. I'm going to play next hour for you Mike Pompeo's speech. Secretary of State gave a speech about the PRC to the National Governors Association. I want you to hear the whole thing. I'm going to play it for you after the top of the show, after maybe the 7:22 segment on the East Coast. I might replay it again in the third hour because it's so important that people hear it. But it's a bad situation out there unless you are Jeff Bezos or the owners of Secure Space or one of the, but it's a bad situation for the world. It's a terrible situation for the world. Let me tell you again, this is Joe Biden yesterday in play cut number 6. He gets a question, how come you lost in Iowa, at cut number 5, excuse me, and he answers the young voter this way.
So how do you explain the performance in Iowa, and why should the voters believe that you can win the national election?
It's a good question. Number 1, Iowa's a Democratic caucus. You ever been to a caucus? No, you haven't. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest.
Yeah, so charming. Joe Biden, so charming. Get Grandpa off the stage. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I'm a little stunned. Dwayne just announced a new category of days off called Hondo Days. Hondo Days are days where you spend the day watching John Wayne Hondo and hope that you can identify this.
You're a line dog faced pony soldier.
Now, a Hondo Day is it's not on the Salem broadcast day of official holidays, but Dwayne was just in the studio arguing he needs to go home and watch Hondo so that he can isolate.
You're a line dog faced pony soldier.
Now, he knows that there's a Tyrone Power movie known as Pony Soldier, so he's added there might also be a Pony Soldier Day off behind the Hondo Day off. So when is Hondo Day coming?
Right now, actually.
You're leaving to go watch Hondo.
Well, here's the thing. Everybody is reporting that Biden was citing this line from that movie by John Wayne, and nobody can actually point to it existing.
And so you have to watch Hondo.
I don't know if I do or not. Should we? Do we want to catch Joe Biden in a lie? Do we want to catch Joe Biden completely making something up?
You mean you want a day off to watch an old John Wayne movie?
I don't care.
Unbelievable. Hondo Days off. Unbelievable. But let's check on markets, shall we? Global concerns about the coronavirus are out there. I have been telling you for months that you ought to diversify into gold and silver, and here is the good news. You don't have to be a billionaire to diversify. All you have to do is text my name, Hugh, to 474747, and Birch Gold Group will send you all the information you need to open a precious metals-backed IRA, giving you security from anything that happens. I personally don't think that the coronavirus will become, it is a pandemic. By definition, it's a pandemic. I don't think it's going to be 1918 because I think our science will be ahead of it, but I don't trust the Chinese, so there should be some disruption. I think gold is going to go up, and that's why you want to be diversified. Just text Hugh to 474747. Birch Gold, by the way, is celebrating this February's bonus day. You get an extra day in February 29th, leap year. Hard for the Steeler fans to understand, but you get an extra day. And for every $5,000 you put in the IRA, they're going to give you a bonus. A free 1-ounce silver coin. So if you put in $15,000 of your IRA into one of the Birch Gold physical metal-backed IRA, they'll send you 3 of these coins. Birch Gold has thousands of satisfied customers, completely reliable country, countless 5-star reviews, A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau. Text Hugh, H-U-G-H, to 474747 to claim your info kit, claim your eligibility. I want to know what happened overnight. Now, we don't know until the end of the day today. It'll be late this afternoon when we know how the market absorbs this information. But overnight, they were okay overseas. Japan dropped about 0.6%. Hong Kong was down about the same. England a little bit off. Germany a little bit off. But gold had gone up a couple of ticks. The 10-year Treasury at 1.58 dropped below 1.6 again. People are wondering, they see coronavirus spreading. But the thing is, it doesn't just devastate everyone. It does if you get sick, you lose all that productivity. If you die, that's the end of the game. That's a very sad thing. We got many hundred dead in China already, and we think the numbers are higher. But there will be some companies like Amazon, and I always disclose I own Amazon, that will soar as people say, I'm not going to go to the mall today. But who's going to get hammered? Foreign travel. If cruise ships, if more than one cruise ship gets the coronavirus, say goodbye to cruise ships for a while until they get this thing quarantined. That's why the PRC worries me so much. They have such an incentive to let this escape China. They'll deny that, but they have such an incentive. There are a bunch of people who have embarrassed President Xi. They want to be on a cruise ship out of China before Xi finds out who let this thing get out of Wuhan. Stay tuned. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. That's Joe Biden. I'm joined because it's Mondays with Mike by Mike Allen of Axios AM. He leads Axios AM this morning with the announcement from the Bloomberg campaign of many insider details and the declarative. I think Mike Allen is definitive. So he finally declared Pete Buttigieg the winner of Iowa. I did yesterday because he got 14 delegates and Bernie got 12, and those are the rules. Mike, is everyone else accepting that Pete Buttigieg won?
Of course not. And you saw that both Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg have claimed a victory. I was in New Hampshire at the end of last week, and there's so much Pete momentum there. You see it, feel it. There, scroll down in Axios AM to the third item. You'll see an astonishing picture of a Pete rally, just massive. And somebody sent me, I'm just talking into the speaker on my phone because I'm just looking for the picture. Somebody sent me a picture from another Pete rally yesterday. So a lot of excitement about Pete in New Hampshire, but there's so much still uncertainty about these Iowa results. So lead story of the New York Times, 2 columns, a big splash, like they dug into a little bit of an autopsy on Iowa. And what they found was, one, it was not just the app, that these problems went back months, and some had foreseen them. Second, 1 in 6 of the precincts has irregularities in their math, and they think that 1 in 10 of the precincts may have misallocated their delegates. So, Hugh, I don't think anyone will ever believe this result.
Well, to a certain extent, it's the same as when Rick Santorum beat Mitt Romney, but he didn't beat Mitt Romney because Mitt Romney won. Pete Buttigieg won 14 delegates, and we move on. And I'm looking at this picture of the mayor at Salem High School in New Hampshire, which is a Jim Borg Reuters photo that you referenced over at Axios. And by the way, I think the staffer of the year is going to come down to a playoff between Liz Smith, who is Pete Buttigieg's comms director, and Brad Parscale, who's running the Trump campaign. They're both kind of evil geniuses. I love Liz. She taunts me all the time, says Mayor Pete's coming back on my show, and then he never shows up. But she's done an amazing job. I mean, he's the mayor of South Bend, Mike Allen, and he's electrified a full 25 to 35% of the Democratic primary electorate.
Well, you're right. Just making your point. He's the former mayor of South Bend now. And that's right. And part of it has been this strategy of being ubiquitous, of going on everywhere, everything. Another reporter was telling me that they were going to do a CNN hit last weekend, and there was Pete Buttigieg who had done his hit, like making himself available, and that's what works in these early states.
Oh, I got to tell you though,
charm.
I've invited Liz 100, maybe 200 times via DM, and she keeps. He did the show once, and she says he'll keep coming back, and he doesn't want to come near anyone a second time. He immunizes himself against the idea that he doesn't do center right media, and then or conservative shows, and then but he does it once, and so he's immunized. I want to talk about Donald Trump's tweet just now because the President of the United States just tweeted. The troll in chief says, we'll be in Manchester, New Hampshire tonight for a big rally. Oh, how he just screws with the Democrats. Want to shake up the Dems a little bit. They have a really boring deal going on. Still waiting for the Iowa results. Votes were fried. Big crowds in Manchester. I got to tell you, he never misses an opportunity to gig him, Mike Allen, ever.
Yeah, this is a great one. You definitely a breaking tweet of the president, 6:28 a.m. on top of it. But you've seen this in other states. You saw Vice President Pence and the president going into other places where Democrats were having debates and contests. So this is going to be we're going to see a lot of fun pictures of the Trump rally versus these other candidates' rallies. The Trump rallies are so extraordinary that now TV stations are running aerial pictures of them. So the president's recent rally in New Jersey, there was these massive crowds outside, and I think that the Trump campaign loves having people outside because you can get these aerial pictures. But the fact that the local Fox chopper who was taking pictures of the Trump line shows a little bit what's happening. The Buttigieg campaign, Liz Smith, you mentioned before, is a senior strategist, is a media guru, tweeted a picture yesterday of the Buttigieg overflow. So they're picking up on that trick. And Tim Murtaugh, the Trump campaign's communications director, tweets back how cute.
Yeah, well, highest form of flattery. Let me switch to overseas. There's coronavirus and there's German shakeup. Angela Merkel had designated an heir apparent. It's supposed to become the head. Karrenbauer is her last name. Angela Karrenbauer. I can't remember. Krasher Karrenbauer, who said today, "I'm done. I'm out. I'm not going to do it." This probably means Jan Spence becomes Rick Grinnell's buddy, becomes the new leader of the German center right, but we're not sure. And it's the major NATO ally after Brexit is done and the UK has walked away. Germany is in chaos. And now we find coronavirus spreading through Europe. How much trouble's Europe in?
Well, you've teed it up nicely and just embedded point there. Rick Grinnell, the president's ambassador to Germany, is among his most trusted ambassadors. People think of him as sort of the voice of Europe, and so that change is fascinating. That is great context for that. And Hugh, the virus still underestimated the possible effects of that. Still underestimated what will happen if it moves around more in the United States. And we have a fascinating stat at the top of Axios AM today, just looking at the effects on the global economy, and the virus by itself has put a stop to 43 quarters of, so what is that? That's 4 years, right? 43 quarters of global growth. So it's a decade of global growth, and it's all because of an estimate that the global economy will lose $280 billion in Q1. Part of that is the nightmare, Hugh, for tech manufacturing. The supply chains are so deeply embedded in China, and we're just beginning to appreciate that, realize that with the virus. People have been paying too little attention to that. We're now seeing it in a very vivid way.
I just read Steve Schwartzman's book, What It Takes, the founder of Blackstone, and he always looked at a crisis as, where's the opportunity in the crisis? So I was looking at that, and it will be with people like Amazon who take advantage, home delivery. People don't want to go out into the mall and things like that, but also people who specialize in supply chain disruption. I happen to own some shares in Secure Space, which is a startup that helps people deal with that. So I'm very happy from an economic perspective, but I'm very alarmed because of a story in the South China Morning Post this morning. And I don't know if you read that, Mike, of two escapees from the coronavirus quarantine. And I believe that you have a corrupt Communist Party that takes bribes, and you have a bunch of ideologues who wouldn't mind to export the virus elsewhere in order that the panic be generalized and not focused on China, and that the GDP loss not be suffered disproportionately by China. We have a bad Tinder-like situation for an explosion of a virus, but science is on our side like it wasn't in 1918. They're going to be able to identify the antivirals that work pretty quickly. When does Axios move to having an entire newsletter devoted to coronavirus? Because I think that the New York Times has done it, the Wall Street Journal has done it, the Telegraph has done it, South China Morning Post has done it. When is Axios going to do it?
So Axios has been early and heavy on the coronavirus coverage. We've relaunched our China newsletter, Axios China, which I would encourage your listeners to sign up for. It's once a week. It's fantastic coverage, and it puts into perspective these massive changes as the number one economy, the U.S., becomes the number two economy to China. So we've been looking at coronavirus there. And then in addition to that, we have a science staff, including a reporter who specializes in epidemiology and pandemics. So it's all part of the Axios idea of looking ahead, of keeping you up on the trends that are going to shape the next 5 years. And economically, socially, medically, the coronavirus is going to have such incredible ripple effects.
Did you ever read The Great Influenza by John Barry?
I do. Not only it's for your reader, for your listeners, not only is it eye-opening, illuminating reporting, but it's amazing writing. It's one of the best written books of our lifetime. Worthy of your time in any season, but especially now, to give you perspective about why you should care about the coronavirus.
Can you imagine if you'd been a reporter in 1918 who had the story? If you were the Axios of 1918 and you dove deep into it from the beginning, you would win every Pulitzer. You would be doing the world a great service. But nobody covered it because of the Wilsonian authoritarianism at the time, press censorship and throwing people in jail. Wilson was a genuine authoritarian during World War I. No one got the real story on the virus. I think Axios has an opportunity here, which it sounds like you guys are already taking. Last 30 seconds to you, Mike. I don't think we're anywhere near peak coronavirus coverage. What do you think?
No, we'll put aside the coverage. We can see that the effects of it are spreading, and it's illuminating issues like she's control and how are they handling it. What was the misinformation? What was the suppression of the information early on, and what were the consequences of that? Those are all questions, great questions about this regime, worth asking, now exposed.
Mike Allen, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me. Follow him on Twitter at Mike Allen. Also follow Axios at Axios. Go to Axios.com. Get the morning AM, Axios AM from Mike. I'm holding my honor-bound coffee. Don't forget, I'm sipping my honor-bound coffee. I slurped it for your benefit. It's wonderful coffee. Every dollar of profit goes to support military families, and you need to do that. We lost 2 more great Americans in Afghanistan this weekend. Blue on green, violence, we think, and very, very sad. But also time to take my relieffactor.com. There you go. It's Monday. The only way to get through a week like this one is to take every day my Relief Factor. So they're the 4 pills. I take the 4 pills with my lukewarm honor-bound coffee. And now I am set for the day. Did my patriotic duty, support the troops with honor-bound coffee, took care of myself with relieffactor.com, took care of my audience by reminding you, go and get it. Relieffactor.com is Icarian, curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. The 4 natural supplements that help your body support the temporary relief of minor aches and pains. I told you about the Antonio Banderas Pain and Glory movie. There are a lot of people out there who have a lot of different... This is a film director who's been hobbled by many, many illnesses by the age of 60. And the cumulative effects of that can drive some people into terrible behavior patterns. Don't do that. Try everything else, including relieffactor.com. Salena Zito is next, America. Stay tuned. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt on a Monday, joined as I am most Mondays for the Yinzer Report by Salena Zito. All things Salena Zito, found at the Washington Examiner, the New York Post, and follow her on Twitter at Salena Zito. Good morning, Salena. How are you?
Good morning, Sunshine. I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm great because the president keeps making the show easy. Just tweeted out 2 minutes ago, 95% approval rating in the Republican Party, a record 53% overall, parens plus add 9 points, question mark. Corrupt Democrat politicians have brought me to highest polling numbers ever with the impeachment hoax. Thank you, Nancy. Your reaction, Salena Zito, to the president's taking a victory lap?
Oh, well, and he's going to New Hampshire tonight
Yep.
as well. Well, I think that he has this uncanny way of picking up what people are feeling, but yet what most want to be heard and reinforced. And that's exactly what he just did with that tweet. They don't hear that from the news at all. They don't hear that, spoken within our pop culture. With you watch the Oscars within 5 minutes, Brad Pitt is taking a swipe.
Yep.
But he, talks. He bypasses our entire profession, goes right to the people, and says, "This is what's going on. You know that. Here I am. This is what we're doing."
And meanwhile, the latest Emerson College tracking poll, Bernie Sanders at 30%, unchanged. Pete Buttigieg at 23%, plus 3. Amy Klobuchar, 14, plus 1. Elizabeth Warren, 11%, minus 1. And in fifth place, Joe Biden at 10%.
Stupid does.
Iran has 14 million people. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
It's not a
How
country.
about this?
You're a lying
Six,
dog-faced
seven,
pony
eight.
soldier. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
What do you make of this, Salena? Joe Biden is melting down in real time.
You ain't no John Wayne. I think that was a John Wayne quote from the Yellow Rose of Texas.
Well, Dwayne says it's Hondo. He wants it to take a Hondo day off so he could watch Hondo to find the quote. You think it's in the Yellow Rose of Texas? You're going to want 2 days off now, Salena.
I'm pretty sure. But yeah, it's, I said this after he did his rollout beginning in Pittsburgh, that something's not right here. I mean, if he never speaks, he can win. But seeing him at that fire hall in Pittsburgh, or at the Teamster Hall in Pittsburgh with the firefighters, it was clear that that everybody had wanted Joe to run except for Joe.
Yeah.
And I'm shocked that no one in his family said, "Hey, Dad," or "Hey, honey, no, you can't do this."
Now, he's only in fourth place in the Boston Globe poll, which has Sanders 27, Buttigieg 19, Warren and Biden tied at 12, but Klobuchar at 14. So he's tied for fourth place in that one. It's in Emerson. He's in fifth place. I don't know how you dig out of that hole in South Carolina. They keep saying, "Oh, the black vote, the black vote, the black vote." Black voters know who's losing. What are they saying about South Carolina, that they're walled off from information?
No, they're not walled off from information, but I've been down there a couple times. He still is incredibly popular down there. And the fault lies within the other candidates not being able to tap into what's important to black voters, and more importantly, understanding the black voter, which is not this, white woke pants, right?
Right.
They are the most conservative element within the Democratic Party. They are very pro-life, and they are much more conservative on a lot of issues, and the Democratic Party keeps going for this wokey stuff. And
now you're going to get quoted by Media Matter. Emo and Toby, they've doubled down now on the number of people listening to my show because they do a story a day. Emo and Toby are going to say, doubling down on woke stuff. Salena Zito declares Democrats clueless. I declare to Emo and Toby they got to get out of Media Matters, but I also declare if they think you can resurrect this party. The Republicans in South Carolina are going to vote for Bernie. Salena, have you heard that in Steelertown yet? That the Republicans are voting for Bernie for a choice and not an echo?
Yeah, I have heard that. For Media Matters, they should check out the stories I've written from South Carolina, coming from black voters as well as black elected officials, saying that very thing, that the party is way too elite for the things that they value. This is not me making that prediction. This is them saying, this is how I feel, and you are not with
Yeah,
me.
but Emo and Toby will take 1 word out of 5 that you say, Salena. You just got to get used to Media Matters. Emo and Toby are they're the dynamic duo of Media Matters, and they cover me somewhat obsessively. They're going to find out that Dwayne has taken a Hondo day off and go after Dwayne, too. Salena Zito. Follow her in the Washington Examiner. Follow her in the New York Post. Follow me to the next hour. Her on Twitter at Salena Zito. Me on Twitter at Hugh Hewitt. And you right here on The Hugh Hewitt Show. Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada, and a special good morning to WPNN FM 103.7, 790 AM in Pensacola. Pensacola, number one information and sports leader, now has the Hugh Hewitt Show live, the home of naval aviation, and I've got lots of friends, Stinger, Demnick, Profile, lots of different folks have been flying over Pensacola for decades, and they are my pals, and I'm glad to have Pensacola join the Hugh Hewitt Family Show, now numbering 400 plus affiliates. Pleased to introduce to you in Pensacola someone that my audience knows very well, the host of Washington Weekend Review on PBS every Friday night, the Washignton Post and NBC's own Robert Costa. Follow him on Twitter at Costa Reports Pensacola. And to my audience who are listening on WPNN FM 103.7, 790, always get their Twitter handles. Robert Costa is at Costa Reports. I'm at Hugh Hewitt. Good morning, Bob. How are you? Where do we find you?
I'm about to fly to New Hampshire. I'm going to be the pool reporter today with Vice President Pence. He's going to go to a Cops for Trump rally in New Hampshire, then go to the rally with President Trump in Manchester. The White House is trying to make sure they have some presence in New Hampshire, even as the Democrats are all there.
Now, the president announced he is going to go to a rally tonight on Twitter about 20 minutes ago. That's counter-programming on a level I've never seen. I was in New Hampshire 4 years ago when all of the Republicans and the Democrats were there, but I don't recall when it's an uncontested primary, as Trump's is, that person going to counter-program. Do you, Robert Costa?
It is unprecedented. We haven't seen a White House in a presidential campaign engage in this kind of counter-programming at this level. Sometimes campaigns in the past and incumbents have sent surrogates to different early nominating states just so they have some kind of presence there. But to send dozens and dozens of surrogates to have these major arena rallies, it for President Trump's allies, it's really about overwhelming the Democrats, making them feel like they're not the main story, trying to compete with them at every turn, overwhelm them with liveliness and political attacks.
Now, the president also just tweeted out 95% approval rating in the Republican Party, a record 53% overall, and he added in parentheticals plus or minus 9 points. Corrupt Dem politicians have brought me to the highest polling numbers ever with the impeachment hoax. Thank you, Nancy. Hard to argue with the numbers, Bob Costa. The failure of impeachment appears to have helped the president.
My Sunday front page story with Phil Rucker in the Washington Post is all about how there's anxiety now in the Democratic Party. The Gallup poll shows President Trump at 49%. He has just emerged from the impeachment process, a Senate trial with acquittal. He's moving forward with retribution on certain fronts, going against his political enemies, some enemies internally in the administration that he perceives. So you see a president unbound at this moment, feeling very confident. And the economy in particular is what is boosting this White House's view of everything as they head toward November.
You know, now talk to me a little bit about the Democratic side. I have been following it as closely as any Republican does. I've already voted for Bernie Sanders in Virginia, so my vote is cast. But it seems to me Buttigieg has got the momentum, even as, because of this quote,
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
That Joe Biden continues to fall, pratfall after pratfall, Robert Costa. Is that campaign, the Biden campaign, on an elevator that's only going down?
The elevator is going to have a major test in South Carolina later this month, Saturday, right before Super Tuesday. South Carolina primaries, what the Biden campaign has put an emphasis on ever since the start, because they make the case that they can win over black voters and Pete Buttigieg can't, and that no one else really has that power with black voters in the Democratic Party. So at this point, you already have Biden lowering expectations in New Hampshire. He stumbled in Iowa. Nevada's not going to be that easy for him either. So it's all in South Carolina. And the big question in this Democratic race right now is, does Biden lose South Carolina? Does someone else somehow slip through? Senator Sanders, someone else, Buttigieg even. Does Biden lose South Carolina? And if he loses South Carolina, Super Tuesday becomes very scrambled, and the Bloomberg ascendancy comes into even clearer focus because of his money and his ability to say, hey, if Biden can't be the standard bearer for the center, that's me. But that at the same time, if Buttigieg has momentum, that's a threat to Bloomberg and Biden as well. Buttigieg is really catching on with people who want a new face, someone who can compete with President Trump, be the total opposite temperamentally.
You know, there is an attempt by by some people to bootstrap Amy Klobuchar into contention. And I know she might get to 10% or 11%, but not after Iowa, where she's the neighbor, not if you come in third or fourth in New Hampshire. I just don't see her playing in the South. I don't see her playing in Super Tuesday. Is that ship sailed as well, Robert Costa?
If she can come in second or third in New Hampshire, and some polls show that's possible, she's going to be a contender. If she comes a distant fourth and she's hovering around 8, 9, 10% in New Hampshire, she could probably stay in the race until Super Tuesday, but it's hard to see her how she competes. At this point, she's done better than expected, so she's helped her national political profile, but she has to have a really strong finish in New Hampshire, because if Buttigieg and Bernie are pulling ahead with 25, 26, 28% in New Hampshire and she's down at 8, 9%, it's just hard to see her have a case. And same for Senator Warren. Senator Warren has some money and a name, but her poll numbers continue to slip.
You know what I think she's done, Amy Klobuchar, the senator from Minnesota, Robert Costa, is make herself the early front runner in the Veep stakes for either Bernie Sanders or Pete Buttigieg. In other words, go out there, you fight the fight, you define yourself as a moderate. The Minnesota is not considered by many people to be in play, but it is. You get maybe a little Iowa bump, you get a little Wisconsin bump with Amy Klobuchar. I've been saying for months, Josh Shapiro, the Attorney General of Pennsylvania, gets the Keystone State in play, but I think Amy Klobuchar doggedly hanging in there has maybe pushed her up the Veep stakes rankings. What do you think, Robert Costa?
I think that's a very fair point, and she's definitely going to be in the Veep stakes mix. If it ends up being Vice President Biden, or Mayor Bloomberg, or even Pete Buttigieg, you could see easily Senator Klobuchar being part of that list. So the Democratic Party has put a real emphasis on having diversity on the ticket. So they may want a person of color. We'll have to see.
Now, talk to me a little bit about coronavirus and whether or not it is impacting. Let's just start with Washington Week in Review. I did not see Friday night's show. I was out with the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt. So my question is, did you cover coronavirus on Friday night, and has it begun to break through as the international pandemic crisis it may well be already that we are just not really aware of yet?
We're looking at it, and we've talked about it on the show and in the newsroom, as a potential black swan, politically, economically, medically, throughout the world. The economy right now is so strong, the market's at an all-time high. But if you look at the Chinese this morning, if the workers aren't showing up as ordered in China, you could have economic turbulence if these factories don't really start humming again in China. And a massive economic slowdown would slow down the entire global economy. There's real questions about Xi Jinping, his ability to lead China. Can he actually get this country functioning? Is he going to accept global medical help? And at this point, it's very unclear what the actual situation is in China.
Now, the lead this morning over at the Sky News is UK coronavirus cases double as 4 more test positive after coming into contact with a super spreader. They now have 11 Britons who have been infected by one man who caught the virus in Singapore, then went to France and the United Kingdom. So it's a highly virulent strain, at least that this guy has. Anyone who's read The Great Influenza knows it goes through passages. It can become more lethal as it does that. I'm already getting hate mail for saying the market impacts. There's a human toll, there's an economic toll, there's a political toll. On the economic side, some people are winners like Amazon, which I own. I always tell you, some people are losers like Apple because they got a supply chain there. But on the political side, I haven't begun to figure out winners and losers yet. What do you think, Robert Costa?
It's hard to start getting into winners and losers at this point. What's important to watch with coronavirus is, does the Chinese Communist Party have a solution for containing this? Yes, there are going to be global spread, but does China have a solution here in terms of quarantine? And then you see the U.S. military at this point. What is the CDC plan? How are they going to deal with the people who are coming in from countries that have major problems with coronavirus? Are there going to be quarantines in the United States at some point? And so President Trump will be evaluated in terms of preparation in case this thing escalates as a global pandemic. At this point, wishing for the best, like everyone in the world, But all eyes on China, both economically and medically, as they deal with this crisis.
And I do not believe it is possible to overreact the 1918 pandemic from your hometown of Philadelphia when it exploded. It was a lamentable history of serial underreaction for fear of inciting panic when they should have done exactly the opposite. Overreact. Robert Costa, a pleasure. Costa Reports on Twitter. If you're listening, whether you're on Pensacola, WPNN FM 103.7 F on the FM dial or 790 AM, welcome to the Hugh Hewitt universe, and stay tuned. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Little Johnny Cash for you this morning. Memories are made of New Hampshire or dreams. Lots of shattered campaigns on the Granite State rocks. We'll find out more on Wednesday. Financial Times reported over the weekend investors are bidding up companies trying to alleviate the coronavirus outbreak, from biotechs working on treatments and vaccines to telemedicine companies catering for the sick stuck at home. Some are seeking fast money trades, diving into smaller biotechs with long shots at a vaccine. Others are hunting for more solid long-term investments that could be buoyed by the epidemic. I do not invest in biotech at all because I ain't smart enough. But I know a lot of people are. There have been an incredible amount of interest in the biotech industry in the wake of the coronavirus, said the chairman of Great Hill Capital. The market is pouncing on the most likely beneficiaries, even though the process of developing a vaccine doesn't happen overnight. The coronavirus has spread to more people than the 2003 SARS epidemic, killed more than 800 people. The U.S. is at least the fifth country, including China, in which the infection is spreading through human-to-human contact. On Friday, the SEC announced the temporary suspension of trading in Athlon Medical because of concerns that third parties were spreading false information. Be aware of that they've got a potential drug that will help. Quote, you will have winners in the race to the finish line on the vaccine or cure, but you also have investors betting that certain companies have an edge in how to treat the coronavirus. Gilead Sciences jumped 5%. Another company jumped, Regeneron Pharmaceutical jumped up 13%. Here's my advice to you. Beware. Just beware. I am invested in Amazon and Secure Space, and I ain't changed. I haven't bought. I have not sold since the beginning of this thing. I just think they both happen to be likely to benefit from the consequences of this, but I don't think people ought to be shorting travel companies because it's possible you could get screwed. They might solve it tomorrow. Now, let me begin by, I want you to hear the entirety of Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's speech about China to the National Governors Association last Thursday. I think it was Thursday, might have been Friday, because it's a big deal what he had to say. He began, however, by telling a few California jokes, which is always good to warm up the governors. Cut number 16.
Me here today. It's a hard act to follow, following the President's State of the Union address the other night. I have no medals of freedom to distribute here today, nor am I passing out copies, so you can't tear them up when I'm done. I've gotten to know some of you as I've traveled throughout the states. I've probably traveled inside the country more than many secretaries of state. It's something they usually don't do as much. I think it's important that the American people understand what our diplomats are doing around the world and why we're doing it. So I just wanted to mention that if you see me in your state, I'm not lost. I know your state has not seceded from the Union. I know where I am. Although I know there's some folks in California who are clamoring for Cal exit. So President Newsom, I look forward to working with Secretary of State Feinstein when that comes to be. I can get away with California jokes. I grew up in Southern California. My dad still lives in the same house I grew up in Orange County. It's a wonderful place.
Mike Pompeo is a Kansan, but with Orange County roots. He went on to talk about the governors, about the Chinese. Cut number 17.
Last year, I received an invitation to an event that promised to be, quote, an occasion for exclusive deal-making.
Stop right there. Quote, I want you to hear the whole thing. Last year, he got an invitation to an event that promised to be about exclusive deal-making. That's why this speech matters, why people have to understand as well. And it mixes with the coronavirus story. It really does. The PRC is not our friend. They are not our enemy. They are our competitor. They are our adversary. They have to be on your watch list. And the Secretary of State happened to have explained it last week. I read the speech and got the tape, and Dwayne cut it up, and I want you to hear it too. Stay tuned for breaking news always. In the latest Boston Globe poll, Amy Klobuchar up to 14%. Sorry, that train has left. Buttigieg is going to get the moderate lane. Stay tuned, America. This is a band camp song. It's a band camp song called the trailer music for the rhythm section. The rhythm section. Generalissimo was the chaperone for the band over the weekend in San Francisco. They only lost 4. It's pretty good. 4 out of how many?
4 out of how many what? Bands?
Yeah.
Oh, there's 3 pages of acts. There was like, I don't know, 8 bands, 9 bands.
So you only lost 4? That's good. That's good.
Was there a contest?
Yeah, well, okay, just checking. I hope they get back. How old were these band camp kids?
High school, freshmen to, 14 to 18.
So if you only lose 4 in San Francisco, that's not bad.
They all came back.
No, come on. You were telling me earlier you lost 4.
I had my bus was, I had my bus accounted for.
Okay, just saying. All right, I told you that Secretary of State Pompeo gave a speech last week to the governors. I want you to hear it all. I'm going to spend the rest of the hour playing it as much as I need next hour. He warmed the crowd up with a couple of California jokes, and then he got serious. Cut number 17.
Place. Last year, I received an invitation to an event that promised to be, quote, an occasion for exclusive deal-making. It said, quote, the opportunities for mutually beneficial economic development between China and our individual states are tremendous, end of quote. Deal-making sounds like it might have come from President Trump, but the invitation was actually from a former governor. I was being invited to the U.S.-China Governors Collaboration Summit. It was an event co-hosted by the National Governors Association and something called the Chinese People's Association for Friendship and Foreign Countries. Sounds pretty harmless. What the invitation did not say is that the group I just mentioned, is the public face of the Chinese Communist Party's official foreign influence agency, the United Front Work Department. Now, I was lucky. I was familiar with that organization from my time as the director of the Central Intelligence Agency. But it got me thinking, how many of you made the link between that group and Chinese Communist Party officials? What if you made a new friend while you were at that event? What if your new friend asked you for introductions to other politically connected and powerful people? What if your new friend offered to invest big money in your state, perhaps in your pension, in industries sensitive to our national security?
Keep going, cut number 18.
These aren't hypotheticals. These scenarios are all too true, and they impact American foreign policy significantly. Indeed, last year, a Chinese government-backed think tank in Beijing produced a report that assessed all 50 of America's governors on their attitudes towards China. They labeled each of you friendly, hardline, or ambiguous. I'll let you decide where you think you belong. Someone in China already has. Many of you, indeed, in that report are referenced by name. So here's the lesson. The lesson is that competition with China is not just a federal issue. It's why I wanted to be here today, Governor Hogan. It's happening in your states with consequences for our foreign policy, for the citizens that reside in your states, and indeed for each of you. And in fact, whether you're viewed by the CCP as friendly or hardline, know that it's working you. Know that it's working the team around you. Competition with China is happening inside of your state, and it affects our capacity to perform America's vital national security functions.
So they got a scouting report on every governor inside the CCP. They probably have a scouting report on Dwayne. They probably just added Hondo days off to it. But the Secretary of State continues to the governor with the historical context for doing business with the PRC. Cut number 19.
I want to set the context today for this topic. At the end of the Cold War, America started to engage with China heavily. It made good sense. We thought that the more we interacted, the more it would become like a liberal democracy, like us here in the United States. It didn't happen. and you all know this. Indeed, under Xi Jinping, the country is moving exactly in the opposite direction. More repression, more unfair competition, more predatory economic practices, indeed a more aggressive military posture as well. Now, you should know, this doesn't mean we can't do business with China. I had an operation when I ran Century International. We had a small office in Shanghai. We can find places to cooperate when our interests converge. You can see that in the first part of the trade deal that President Trump got done, signed last month. We're happy about that. It was the right thing to do. That was indeed a deal that was good for both the United States and China. And these economic ties are powerful. They're important and good. They're good for your state. They're good for America. Look at the nearly 18 tons of medical supplies the United States just flew to China this past week to help fight the coronavirus. Yesterday, we announced more than $100 million in assistance to China and the countries that are affected by that virus. And on that note, too, I want to take just a moment to note I want to send my condolences to the loved ones of the United States citizen who fell victim to the coronavirus in Wuhan over the last days.
He continued talking about how the competition isn't really on a level playing field with the People's Republic of China when it comes to business. Cut number 20.
But while there are places we can cooperate, we can't ignore China's actions and strategic intentions. If we do, we risk the important components of our relationships that benefit both countries. The Chinese government has been methodical in the way it's analyzed our system, our very open system, one that we're deeply proud of. It's assessed our vulnerabilities, and it's decided to exploit our freedoms to gain advantage over us at the federal level, the state level, and the local level. Last year, I announced that I would give a series of speeches on China, and this is part of that. It's the context in which state and local government officials ought to think about the way they lead with respect to our relationship. It's important. China matters. It's been part of my mission at the State Department to mobilize all parts of the United States government. I was out in Silicon Valley a couple of weeks ago to talk to America's leading tech companies about this very set of issues, and I need your help too. What China does in Topeka and Sacramento reverberates in Washington and Beijing and far beyond. Competition with China is happening. It's happening in your state. In fact, I'd be surprised if most of you in the audience have not been lobbied by the Chinese Communist Party directly. Chinese Communist Party friendship organizations like the one that I referenced earlier are in Richmond, Minneapolis, Portland, Jupiter, Florida, and many other cities around the country.
He went on to talk about, meanwhile, at home, the CCP is blocking speech that might otherwise bring this to light. Cut 21.
But sometimes China's activities aren't quite that public, and I want to talk about some of that today. Let me read you an excerpt of a letter from a Chinese diplomat. It was China's consul general in New York, sent a letter last month to the speaker of one of your state legislatures. Here's what the letter said in part. It said, quote, "As we all know, Taiwan is part of China. Avoid engaging in any official contact with Taiwan, including sending congratulatory messages to the electeds, introducing bills and proclamations for the election, sending officials and representatives to attend the inauguration ceremony, and inviting officials in Taiwan to visit the United States." End of quote from the letter. Think about that. You add a diplomat from China assigned here to the United States, a representative of the Chinese Communist Party in the New York City, sending an official letter urging that an American elected official shouldn't exercise his right to freedom of speech. Let that sink in for just a minute. And this isn't a one-off event. It's happening all across the country. Chinese consulates in New York, in Illinois, in Texas, and 2 in California, bound by the diplomatic responsibilities and rights of the Vienna Convention, are very politically active at the state level, as is the embassy right here in Washington, D.C. Maybe some of you have heard about the time when the Chinese consulate paid the UC San Diego students to protest the Dalai Lama. Or last August, when a former governor, Phil Bryant of Mississippi, received a letter from a diplomat in the council's office in Houston threatening to cancel a Chinese investment if the governor chose to travel to Taiwan. Phil went anyway. Last year, a high school in Chicago disinvited a Taiwanese representative to serve on a climate panel after Chinese pressure. You know, it's one thing to pressure the Secretary of State of the United States of America. It seems quite something else to go after a high school principal. It shows depth. It shows systematization. It shows intent. Chinese Communist Party officials, too, are cultivating relationships with county school board members and local politicians, often through what are known as sister cities programs.
There's more coming, and I will play it for you after the break. I do have to tell you, the President of the United States just tweeted a very provocative tweet because of how badly they did with the impeachment hoax. AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the very talented. I want Emo and Toby to note for the record, I always say she's very talented. AOC will primary cry-in Chuck Schumer and win, the president predicts. And Jerry Nadler has a good chance of losing to his far-left primary opponent. It's getting quite interesting, the president adds. Pelosi will lose the House again, in all caps. My poll numbers, great. President is really having a victory lap after a very good week last week. I'm having a victory lap with Honor Bound Coffee. I'm holding it in my hand. I'm showing it to you on the Universe. If you're watching on Town Hall TV or at HughHewitt.com, you should be a member of the Universe, by the way. Dwayne's after show every night at 8 p.m. in the East, 5 in the West. We're going to add some more programming, I think. And Honor Bound Coffee, absolutely essential to supporting the military families of the United States. Never buy another bag of coffee or container of coffee at the Safeway or the Alpha Beta or whatever you shop at, Whole Food. Just go to honorboundcoffee.com and order. Your first bag will be accompanied by a second bag for free. Great coffee, 4 different blends, 4 different grinds. You can be one of those decaf people if you want. You know, you liberals living up in Vermont, I know you're decaf drinkers. You go get Honor Bound Coffee anyway. HonorBoundCoffee.com. Every dollar of profits goes to support military families, starting with the Semper Fi Fund. So it takes 10 minutes to change your coffee purchase. It takes 5 minutes. It takes 3 minutes. And every time you have a cup of coffee like I have in front of me, your sip will support military families. HonorBoundCoffee.com. Don't forget as well, ReliefFactor.com. Second time of the day, second mention of the week. Some of you are a little groggy. You're wandering around the house looking for your keys. You can never find them. Your wife moved them. That's what wives exist to do, to move your keys. And spouses, sometimes husbands do that to wives. I guess spouses just move each other's keys. It's part of the DNA. ReliefFactor.com. And as you hunt for your wallet and your keys, don't forget, take your ReliefFactor.com before you commute. Icarian, curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. Just take it. Support the temporary relief of the minor aches and pains that accompany aging, exercise, and commuting. And a bunch of other things that you just can't escape them. But you can help relieve them. Support the temporary relief of them with ReliefFactor.com. Coming right back with more of Mike Pompeo's speech to the National Governors Association. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo spoke to the National Governors Association last week about how the Chinese Communist Party infiltrating governors' offices, states, and indeed schools. Cut number 22.
Look, this Chinese competition is something you all know. It sits in the back of your mind, but you have many duties, and you are busy people. But this competition is well underway, and while these might seem like local matters to some, the cumulative effect is of enormous national importance and international significance. Of course, too, our public educational institutions are another arena of competition with China. Now, I know, governors, you don't run these institutions on a day-to-day basis, but you often have impact on the people that do. The FBI director, and I think the Attorney General too, talked yesterday about something called the 1,000 Talents Plan. It's a plan to recruit scientists and professors to transfer the know-how we have here to China in exchange for enormous paydays. The program's probably targeted campuses in your state. Indeed, the Department of Justice has indicted professors in my home state, at the University of Kansas, and at Virginia Tech, and at Harvard. A Texas A&M investigation reportedly discovered more than 100 academics participating in Chinese talent recruitment plans. Only 5 of them had declared that they were participating in this program. And goodness knows what else we've not discovered. There are indeed very credible reports of Chinese government officials pressuring Chinese students studying right here in the United States of America, to monitor fellow Chinese students and to report back to Beijing. One very prominent pro-democracy Chinese student on a college campus in the Northeast last year received death threats. Death threats for exercising his right to free speech. The FBI became involved. Make no mistake about it. We want talented, young Chinese students to come study in the United States of America. I see it at Wichita State University. These are wonderful young people. We ought to encourage them to be here. But they shouldn't have to fear the long arm of Beijing, which often reaches out via groups like the Chinese Students and Scholars Association. Look, that's just one of many campus groups directly influenced by the Chinese Communist Party and its representatives right here in the United States. Many of you are familiar with Confucius Institutes. Confucius Institutes purport to have the sole purpose of teaching Mandarin language skills and Chinese culture. A bipartisan Senate committee found last year in 2019 that the Chinese Communist Party controls nearly every aspect of the Confucius Institute's activities here in the United States. Over the past few months, the University of Missouri, the University of Kansas, the University of Maryland have independently decided to close down their Confucius Institutes after conducting their own reviews. And schools in 22 other states are doing or have already done the same. Sadly, China's propaganda campaign starts even earlier than college. China has targeted K-12 schools through its Confucius Classrooms, the CCP's program, to influence kids in elementary, middle, and high schools around the world. Do you know that we have no ability to establish similar programs in China? I'm sure that doesn't surprise you. President Trump's talked about reciprocity in trade. We should have reciprocity in all things. Today they have free rein in our system, and we're completely shut out from theirs. As of 2017, there were 519 of these classrooms in the United States. Beijing knows that today's kids are tomorrow's leaders. The China competition is happening. It's happening in your states, and it's a competition that goes to the very basic freedoms that every one of us values.
And then one more cut very quickly, cut 23, talking about how there's also pension being applied to state finance and pension organizations.
And when it comes to doing business, I'm asking you to adopt a cautious mindset. In the words of President Reagan, when you're approached for an introduction or a connection to a deal, trust but verify. I know you all have power over pension funds or the people that run them. As of its latest public filing, the Florida retirement system is invested in a company that in turn is invested in surveillance gear that the Chinese Communist Party uses to track more than 1 million Muslim minorities. California's pension fund, the largest public pension fund in the country, is invested in companies that supply the People's Liberation Army, that puts our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines at risk. And is the case for many Chinese companies too. No Sarbanes-Oxley. Their books are not wide open. So it's difficult to know if the transaction that's being engaged in is transparent and fair and follows the rule of law. Now, all of these things may well be legal, but the question is, do they demonstrate good judgment and preserve America's national security? I want to urge vigilance on the local level too. In the District of Columbia, there have been concerns raised that the new metro cars manufactured by China could be vulnerable to cyber threats. So again, it's worth trusting but verifying there are federal officials prepared to help you work your way through these challenges when they arise. Don't make separate individual deals and agreements with China that undermine our national policy. I know none of you would do so intentionally. Let us help you make sure we're getting it right.
Make sure we're getting it right. Make sure you come back for the conclusion of Secretary of State Pompeo's speech to the National Governors Association, hour number 3 of the Hugh Hewitt Show, right after these messages. Please stay tuned. Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada, and a special good morning to Pensacola, the cradle of naval aviation now, listening live to the Hugh Hewitt Show. WPNN, FM 103.7, 790 AM, Pensacola's number one information and sports leader. Well, now you've got the number one morning show. All the news you need, the analysis you must have, plus a lot of Cleveland sports. And I know so many aviators that I know I'm going to be talking to some friends there every single morning, but I want more than the aviators. I want the ground crews. I want the machinists. I want the people running the supply shops. I want the mill spouses and their children driving to work this morning. You know that we love the aviation community. We love Pensacola. Welcome aboard the Hugh Hewitt Show. Also want to remind everyone that Created Equal, the Clarence Thomas movie, is in theaters everywhere this week. It's a movie I told you about a lot last week. Created Equal, Clarence Thomas in his own words. So inspiring. I've known the Justice for 35 years and been honored to speak with him on and off the record. He's been on this show a few times, but I can't begin to tell you what Michael Pack's talents are, the director of Created Equal. Go to justicethomasmovie.com, justicethomasmovie.com. Find out where, in fact, you can go and see that movie and go and see it this week. You got the Oscar highs. Skip Parasite, by the way, won all the awards last night, fetching Mrs. Hewitt, to whom, to my new friends in Pensacola, I refer. That's my wife of 38, soon to be 39. And the fetching Mrs. Hewitt just hated Parasite. We loved Pain and Glory, but it didn't win anything. Too bad. We loved Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It won Brad Pitt an Oscar. But Brad Pitt, of course, got up. Let me just play a little Brad Pitt, cut number 14.
Thank you to the Academy for this honor of honors. They told me I only have 45 seconds up here, which is 45 seconds more than the Senate gave John Bolton this week.
So there you go. Okay, so we had the traditional stuff. So even Brad's got the disease. Not coronavirus, Trump derangement syndrome, but we hope he gets better. Let me tell you right now, Steve Martin was funny last night, cut number 15.
Now, a couple of years ago, there was a big disaster here at the Oscars where they accidentally read out the wrong name, and it was nobody's fault, but they have guaranteed that this will not happen this year because the Academy has switched to the new Iowa Caucus app.
Well, you see, that's funny. That's funny. Meanwhile, Joe Biden was unintentionally funny. Here he is in New Hampshire yesterday, cut number 5.
So how do you explain the performance in Iowa, and why should the voters believe that you can win the national election?
It's a good question. Number one, Iowa's a Democratic caucus. You ever been to a caucus? No, you haven't. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you.
All right, that's it. That's what he said.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
I don't know how you think that's a joke, but evidently he did. Meanwhile, he admitted on This Week that he's going to lose, basically. Cut number 6.
I'm just being realistic. I think it's always going to be an uphill fight. When you're running against two people who are neighboring senators, you know the deal. Bernie won here, the neighboring senator, by 20 points last time. So I think it is an uphill fight. But I think it's
and you got to beat the mayor of South Bend. South Bend's just, right over the border, right? Pete Buttigieg got that hometown advantage in the moderate lane. Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota, she's close too. They both have a border with Canada, I think. Does New Hampshire have a border with Canada? I don't know. Joe Biden forgetting what day it is again. Cut number 7.
One more example. 2 days ago in Manchester. Actually, not 2 days ago, Saturday. It seems like 2 days ago.
Yeah, it does when you're Joe Biden. Joe Biden also telling Kurt Schlichter, you don't need an F-15, Kurt, because I've got Hellfire missiles. Cut number 8.
There's never been a limit on who can own, that anybody can own a weapon, period. No, and by the way, those who say the tree of liberty is watered with the blood of patriots, a great line. Well, guess what? The fact is, if you're going to take on the government, You need an F-15 with Hellfire missiles. There's no way an AK-47 is going to take care of you if you're going to take on. You're worried about the government coming down, knocking down your door. And so,
okay, stop for a minute. I have been informed by maybe some of my Pensacola listeners can confirm this. There are no Hellfire missiles on an F-15. They're not a compatible weapon system. I don't know. Joe said it. Probably not true. Joe also talked about automatic weapons, cut number 9.
Because we're unwilling to have a rational policy. It says you cannot have 20, 30, 40, 50 clips in a weapon.
You can't have 20, 40, 50 clips in a weapon. You can have one.
And it's not even a clip; it's a magazine.
It's a magazine. I think you'd have one clip. You can call. I wouldn't fault him for saying a magazine clip. You know, that's a mistake. But he says he's a gun owner. Cut number 10.
There is a Second Amendment, and you do have a right to bear arms, but not an unlimited right. No amendment is absolute. I own a 20-gauge shotgun. I own a 12-gauge shotgun. I'll answer your question in a minute, sir. I own a 20-gauge and a 10-gauge shotgun. I just skeet shoot. I don't even hunt. My sons are hunters. They bird hunt. You know, we protect, by the way, geese crossing the international boundary more than we do people. You can only have 3 shells in your shotgun if you're going goose hunting. Okay, but you can have 100 rounds in a magazine that you can buy today.
You know, Generalissimo is telling me you don't really want to fire a 10-gauge. I don't know. I think Kurt Schlichter goes out and fires 10 gauges for breakfast. It has a kick, I'm told, but, you know, we don't know. Chuck Todd with Bernie Sanders talking about young people yesterday, cut number 11.
Except you can't win voters outside of that very well. I mean, you were in single digits among older voters, and I say this because older voters vote.
The answer is yes and no. The answer is we are having, and we have got to work on this issue because my record with 4 senior citizens is a very strong record, and we're going to work on that. I'm the strongest defender you could see in defending Social Security and so forth. But in terms of Democrats, in terms of running against Trump, we do just fine with senior citizens who will vote for me against Trump if they're Democrats.
And then Bernie adds more to Chuck Todd, cut number 12.
Since Tuesday, Buttigieg has gained 7 points overall, while Biden has lost 5 overall in that poll. The other thing we learned is that matters could hardly be worse right now for Democrats. The Iowa vote count fiasco is a national embarrassment. The Democratic Party is divided against itself, left versus center left. The candidate once seen as having the best chance of beating President Trump is in a polling freefall and low on money. The party establishment is terrified of a Sanders nomination, but at a loss for how to stop him. And through it all, President Trump was acquitted of impeachment charges. His poll numbers are improving, and he's feeling as confident as ever.
Chuck was right. Absolutely right. Plus, Bobby Knight went back to Indiana. That was a big deal, too. General gathering of the governors, the National Governors Association. I played for you a lot of what Secretary Mike Pompeo told them. I want to play the end message that Mike Pompeo delivered. This is the Secretary of State talking on Thursday or Friday, I can't be sure, to the National Governors Association about the Chinese Communist Party hitting the state at every level. Cut number 24.
We're here to help. The Trump administration wants to help. There are so many things we have already done. Last year, we issued a letter to state governments. It reaffirmed that Taiwan remains a key business partner and a friend in every other way. We've strengthened the review process for Chinese companies that are investing in your states. We've revoked visas for so-called research scholars who abused their privileges by teaching at Confucius classrooms and made sure that they departed the United States. We've banned scientists from the Department of Energy, which oversees America's 17 largest labs, including our nuclear research facility in New Mexico. We did so because they are participating in Chinese talent recruitment programs. We've directed 2 Chinese propaganda outlets, the Chinese Global Television Network and Xinhua News Agency, to register as foreign agents. And we at the State Department have started to require Chinese diplomats to comply with the same rules we comply with when we're in China. Chinese diplomats now must notify the State Department in advance of official meetings with state and local officials. They must declare their official visits to U.S. educational and research institutions as well. This is just fairness, reciprocity, basic common sense. This is not an onerous restriction to put on China.
One more cut 25, Secretary Pompeo.
Look, I know it's 2:30 on a Saturday afternoon. There were lots of good things we could do. I hope you will all take on board what I've said today. You all have important missions leading your states. These are complex, difficult jobs. You have the task to create jobs and opportunity in your state for your people and attract human capital investment that undergirds our prosperity. It's a tough job. And you get curveballs every day from all across the place. But don't lose sight of the competition from China that's already present in your state. Let's all rise to the occasion and protect our security, our economy, indeed all that we hold dear, all of those freedoms. It's what leaders must do. It's what we do as Americans. God will bless each and every one of you, each of your states in the United States of America. Thank you for letting me be with you here this afternoon.
Great speech by Secretary of State Pompeo. More when we return to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Before I do anything else, I want you to hear one other part of Secretary Pompeo's speech. I want you to hear it again. Cut number 22.
Look, this Chinese competition is something you all know. It sits in the back of your mind, but you have many duties, and you are busy people. But this competition is well underway, and while these might seem like local matters to some, the cumulative effect is of enormous national importance and international significance. Of course, too, our public educational institutions are another arena of competition with China. Now, I know, governors, you don't run these institutions on a day-to-day basis, but you often have impact on the people that do. The FBI director, and I think the Attorney General, too, talked yesterday about something called the 1,000 Talents Plan. It's a plan to recruit scientists and professors to transfer the know-how we have here to China in exchange for enormous paydays. The program's probably targeted campuses in your state. Indeed, the Department of Justice has indicted professors in my home state, at the University of Kansas, and at Virginia Tech, and at Harvard. A Texas A&M investigation reportedly discovered more than 100 academics participating in Chinese talent recruitment plans. Only 5 of them had declared that they were participating in this program. And goodness knows what else we've not discovered. There are indeed very credible reports of Chinese government officials pressuring Chinese students studying right here in the United States of America, to monitor fellow Chinese students and to report back to Beijing. One very prominent pro-democracy Chinese student on a college campus in the Northeast last year received death threats. Death threats for exercising his right to free speech. The FBI became involved. Make no mistake about it. We want talented, young Chinese students to come study in the United States of America. I see it at Wichita State University. These are wonderful young people. We ought to encourage them to be here. But they shouldn't have to fear the long arm of Beijing, which often reaches out via groups like the Chinese Students and Scholars Association. Look, that's just one of many campus groups directly influenced by the Chinese Communist Party and its representatives right here in the United States. Many of you are familiar with Confucius Institutes. Confucius Institutes purport to have the sole purpose of teaching Mandarin language skills and Chinese culture. A bipartisan Senate committee found last year in 2019 that the Chinese Communist Party controls nearly every aspect of the Confucius Institute's activities here in the United States. Over the past few months, the University of Missouri, the University of Kansas, the University of Maryland have independently decided to close down their Confucius Institutes after conducting their own reviews. And schools in 22 other states are doing or have already done the same. Sadly, China's propaganda campaign starts even earlier than college. China has targeted K-12 schools through its Confucius Classrooms, the CCP's program, to influence kids in elementary, middle, and high schools around the world. Do you know that we have no ability to establish similar programs in China? I'm sure that doesn't surprise you. As President Trump's talked about reciprocity in trade, we should have reciprocity in all things. Today, they have free reign in our system, and we're completely shut out from theirs. As of 2017, there were 519 of these classrooms in the United States. Beijing knows that today's kids are tomorrow's leaders. The China competition is happening. It's happening in your states, and it's a competition
happening right now. And he drives it home. He drives it home. He drives it home. I want to drive home that you need to go see the Clarence Thomas movie, Created Equal. Go to justicethomasmovie.com. Created Equal, Clarence Thomas, in his own words, made by filmmaker Michael Pack. You saw a lot of movies last night. You didn't see this one. Maybe it'll be in the best documentary nominees next year. It should be. It is inspiring. It is moving, as Justice Thomas's life story is. Created Equal, Clarence Thomas, in his own words, is across the United States playing right now. You can go and find out wherever that is at justicethomasmovie.com. justicethomasmovie.com. Remarkable life story. I loved when I interviewed him about his book, My Grandfather's Son. Justice Thomas, in his own words, go see Created Equal. I'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Pure Prairie League America, I'm Hugh Hewitt. Welcome, Pensacola. We have the best pump music here on the Hugh Hewitt Show, waking you up every morning. WPNN FM 103.7, 790 AM in the cradle of naval aviation. So glad to have all the flyboys and girls and all of their ground crews and all of their flight surgeons and flight officers and all the mill spouses and the entire community in Pensacola. I got to get down there. I hope WPNN will host me. Love Pensacola. Absolutely love Pensacola. I've been told by all of my flyboy friends that I got to see the museum down there. I haven't seen that. Got to come down and see it. Great to have you with us. One of the things I do on this show, I give you a market report about what happened overnight so you can get ready for the long day ahead in the markets. Brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. And if you're one of my new listeners, andrewandtodd.com are the people you go to. andrewandtodd.com are two of the lenders at Sierra Pacific Mortgage, are the two best ones in the country, and they have their own website, andrewandtodd.com, where you answer a couple of questions, and they will be back to you with the very best refinance option for your home available. Right now, the 10-year Treasury has dropped, plummeted actually to 1.58%. That's not the rate you get, of course, on your 30-year or 15-year mortgage. It's the rate on which they're all based. When it falls, they fall. So now is the time to refinance, consolidate your debt. You veterans in Pensacola, active duty or retired, you're entitled to one VA loan at a time, 100% financing. Get all the equity out of your house if you need to get rid of debt, send kids to college, get a new business going. Your bank is your house, andrewandtodd.com, or you can call them 888-888-1172. 888-888-1172, whether you use the web at andrewandtodd.com or call them at 888-888-1172. They'll be right back to you, 888-888-1172. Overnight, all of the markets went a little bit red abroad. Japan was down 0.6%, the Hong Kong index about the same, England about 1/5 of a point, Germany about 1/5 of a point. Gold ticked up. They're a little bit spooked by coronavirus. Although there will be winners and losers in the world, in the economic sector, it's a lot of human suffering, a lot of human misery. There will be political fallout and there will be economic fallout. Gilead Sciences, I don't own it. It's been ticking up every single day. Amazon, which I do own, been ticking up every single day because whenever you have a pandemic, some people win, some people lose. So you got to follow markets carefully. And I would recommend that you follow whether or not now is the time to refinance your house. andrewandtodd.com. Now, I got to tell you, a funny thing happened to me on the way to work. Actually, while working. I commented this morning that it is absolutely incredible to me that the Department of Defense submitted a budget that does not get the 355 ships. Now, it goes to the Office of Management and Budget. I know that, and OMB sends back they review, and then they approve what the DOD requested. But DOD drives the top line. They drive the allocation between the services. I mean, everybody knows that. OMB makes changes around the edges. They move accounts around, but the president's budget is an accumulation of budget submissions from the department. And Secretary Esper has sent over a top line that does not get anywhere near to 355, and he doesn't cut into the Army's allocation, doesn't raise the Air Force allocation. And what needs to happen is the third needs to be broken, and the Air Force and the Navy need more money. And DOD didn't do it again. So I'm critical of that. And that's a long-running debate, all right? It's not conservative or liberal. Typically, Democrats tend to favor Navy over Army, and Republicans typically have favored Army over Navy. But right now in the South China Sea, as we've covered extensively on this program, we need more ships, a variety of sorts. I bring on the SecNav, the acting SecNav. I bring on Jerry Hendricks. I bring on experts all the time. And out of the blue, this Trump hater by the name of Walter Schaub. Have you ever heard of him, Dwayne? Ever heard of Walter Schaub? Hey, Dwayne, in there. I'm just trying to get the attention of my occasional producer. If you're in Pensacola and you're listening for the time, Dwayne nods off. If I had a producer, this show would be amazing. Have you ever heard of Walter Schaub?
Yeah, I'm trying to think what he does do.
He doesn't do anything anymore. He used to be at the Office of Government Ethics, and he has been a TDSer. Never Trump or TDSer.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about this morning about the DOD defense budget and how it doesn't get to 355 online early, an hour ago. And I wrote, it's hard to understand. President Trump has repeatedly promised a 355-ship Navy. Secretary Esper keeps embarrassing POTUS by reversing course, heading in the exact opposite direction in election year. This upsets me. It's not news. Walter Schaub tweets, this ignorant commentator doesn't know that all draft agency budgets are sent to the President's Office of Management Budget, which gives the agency a pass back telling it how much the President will allow them to request. Then they finalize it, and the President submits it. Ignorant commentator. Now,
see, the thing is, as soon as you said the first three words, this ignorant commentator, I didn't have to hear anything else. What that tells me is, if you are a TDSer,
yes,
and if you have TDS, then anybody who is not a TDS person is instantly to be discredited as a moron.
And what's amazing to me, I don't think Walter Schaub read my Wikipedia page. I used to have to do the OMB thing when I ran OPM, which is a lot bigger than the Office of Government Ethics, Walter. When I was the deputy director and acting director, general counsel there, even when I was general counsel NEH, I think the NEH is bigger than the Office of Government Ethics. But what I really wanted to point, I was in the White House counsel's office. I know this process backwards and forwards. I teach con law. So this person who calls me an ignorant commentator is ignorant of me. But what really surprises me is that he's one of the hand-wringers about the national conversation, about the degradation of the national conversation. Arthur Brooks gave this magnificent speech at the National Prayer Breakfast about, look, you can disagree. You can say to me, hey, you know what? You really ought to blame OMB, not DOD. And that would be fine. And I would say, no, actually, it's DOD's top-line submission before it went over to OMB that drives the OMB passback, and it's really Secretary Esper who's doing this, and everybody knows that, and then we could have a conversation. But it's a genuine ignorant slack.
It's really hard for, especially on Twitter, for both sides right now to be civil.
I don't think it is hard. I think
I'm saying Twitter has. The reason I say it's hard is because you can count on one hand the number of people that play in that space.
Okay, I'm in it. But I expect people who are in it to be respected by people who are out of it as non-combatants in the idiocy war of slander and by the way, Emo and Toby are going to pick this up from Media Matters, and they will fuel it. And it is a cycle that is terrible for America. And Walter Schaub, the, quote, former head of the Office of Government Ethics, close quote, should not be allowed near a classroom because he's modeling exactly what's killing America. Poisonous debate. Poisonous debate.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
That kind of stuff. When you go in for...
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
That's what you're doing.
Come on, man. Come on.
Come on, Walter.
Let me tell you, I think I'm more in step with the lingo than anyone.
I know OMB. I know.
Play the radio. Make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night. The phone.
I tell you, Walter, you need to get with it. Pete Buttigieg, who is going to win New Hampshire because Bernie can't win. I don't think the Democrats will let Bernie win. If Bernie wins New Hampshire, he's the nominee. But I don't think the Democrats will allow it to happen. They're going to have to rally around Pete. Pete went on Fox News Sunday yesterday to talk about heroin and meth. Cut number 13.
Mayor, you not only want to decriminalize marijuana, you want to decriminalize all drug possession. You say that the better answer is incarceration. It's rather treatment, not incarceration.
Right. That's right.
But isn't the fact that it's illegal to possess meth and heroin, doesn't that, at least in some way, the fact that it's illegal, act as some deterrent to actually trying it in the first place?
Well, I think the main thing we need to focus on is where you have distribution and the kind of harm that's done there. Where, yeah, of course it's important that it remain illegal, but
you would decriminalize it, so it wouldn't be illegal.
Possession should not be dealt with through incarceration.
But you would say that possession of heroin is not illegal.
Is not going to be dealt with through incarceration.
But your website says decriminalized. It would not be illegal.
Yes, or it could be a misdemeanor. The point is not the legal niceties. The point is that we have learned through 40 years of a failed war on drugs that criminalizing addiction doesn't work. Not only that, the incarceration does more harm than the offense that it's intended to deal with.
Okay, now I believe Chris Wallace may simply not understand decriminalization does not mean legalization. Decriminalization simply means you are classifying down the severity of the penalty. It may mean legalization. Legalization is a subset of decriminalization, but not all decriminalization is legalization. I happen to agree with Pete Buttigieg here. Unless you are involved in the distribution and manufacture of these drugs, I happen to believe treatment is better. I happen to believe that you ought to take a heroin addict not to jail, but to rehab. I think you ought to take a fentanyl addict anywhere other than jail. But if you're dealing fentanyl, I actually had this argument with Jared Kushner when they were doing criminal justice reform. Said, I don't like your bill. It does not throw away the key for fentanyl distribution, which is just mass homicide. You're just killing people if you're selling fentanyl. And we had that conversation. But I think Buttigieg is right here, but he was also very wrong on Fox News Sunday, cut 4.
No, I don't think that would be the effect. And the reason is we run every other election in this country in the traditional fashion. In other words, the person who gets the most votes gets to win the election. And when you're running for governor of a state of any size, you go to the big cities and you go to the small towns. So we don't run governor's races with some electoral college system where certain counties count more than certain other counties. And if you want to earn that office, you campaign everywhere. I think the same is true for the country. And at the end of the day, it's not clear to me why a rancher in Texas should not count because they're
against the Electoral College. It's never going away. What I wish someone would say is, it's never going away. You need 2/3 of both houses to propose the amendment, and you need 3/4 of the state. Do you really think it's ever going to go away, or are you nuts? Because you can have this conversation all day long at Debate Speech and Debate Club. You can do that all day long, but you cannot realistically believe it's going away. I just can't get over it. I can't get over ReliefFactor.com. I want to tell my Pensacola friends, especially my new listeners, down at the cradle of naval aviation on WPNN FM 103.7, 790 AM. ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com. Take it every day. You're heading out the door to do your commute. If you're in Seattle, right now where I'm live, they play me back to back and they play me live and then they play me again. 6 hours of Hugh Hewitt. Seattle is great. It's like belonging to the universe. I want you people to understand your commute will feel better if you take natural supplements every day. I carry in curcumin, resveratrol, omega. Your back won't hurt as much. Your knees won't bark as much. Your ankles will not throb as much if you have got the right levels of natural supplements that support the temporary relief and the minor aches and pains that dog you if you exercise age, and you're definitely aging. You ought to be exercising. But if you're commuting this morning, it'd have been easier if you'd been taking ReliefFactor.com for 3 weeks. Go and give it a 3-week trial pack, $19.95, and come back for the last segment of today's Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America, and welcome back, WPNN FM 103.7, 790 AM in Pensacola. Pensacola's #1 information and sports leader. So glad to have the Cradle of Naval Aviation join. Got to get down to your city and broadcast from there. You know, the old saying is, all politics are local. Nope. All politics are now national. I got a buddy, Dr. Ken Williams. He is chairman of the Board of Education in Orange County, California. Right? He's a great doctor. He's a good friend. I've known him for 20 years. And Dr. Ken is a very smart politician. I mean, he's been running the Board of Education. Everybody loves Ken Williams. So he put out an ad over the weekend. I grabbed it so you can hear all politics are no longer local. All politics are now national.
Our country and state are in a fiscal crisis. We need more jobs and less regulation in California by the state government. Ken Williams is running for re-election for the Orange County Board of Education. Under Ken's leadership, the Orange County Department of Education has been at the forefront of job training programs through our county ROP programs. We have created opportunities for students in high school, college, and even adults to obtain additional training and certification in specialty fields. Under Ken's education leadership, the Orange County Board of Education has championed parental rights and opposed special interest groups, created more job training programs, built a county deaf school at University High School in Irvine, established a school at the Los Alamitos military base for high-risk youth who would otherwise be incarcerated in our jail system. Ken is running for re-election to represent the district's priorities and values and would appreciate your vote.
Did you hear how he began that? Again, Ken Williams running for school board. Re-election, he's going to win. All politics used to be local, and it ended local, but it began this way.
Our country and state are in a fiscal crisis. We need more jobs and less regulation in California by the state government. Ken Williams is running for re-election for the Orange County Board of Education.
So I just find that amazing. Ken Williams is running on a national platform. He'll win. He'll win, but that's smart play. Meanwhile, the Secretary of State goes to the National Governors Association and tells them, watch out, the People's Republic of China are looking to exploit your state government. Cut number 18.
These aren't hypotheticals. These scenarios are all too true, and they impact American foreign policy significantly. Indeed, last year, a Chinese government-backed think tank in Beijing produced a report that assessed all 50 of America's governors on their attitudes towards China. They labeled each of you friendly, hardline, or ambiguous. I'll let you decide where you think you belong. Someone in China already has. Many of you, indeed, in that report are referenced by name. So here's the lesson. The lesson is that competition with China is not just a federal issue. It's why I wanted to be here today, Governor Hogan. It's happening in your states with consequences for our foreign policy, for the citizens that reside in your states, and indeed for each of you. And in fact, whether you're viewed by the CCP as friendly or hardline, know that it's working you. Know that it's working the team around you. Competition with China is happening inside of your state, and it affects our capacity to perform America's vital national security functions.
One more cut. Go to cut 23. How is it happening? He gave many examples. This is the most important. Cut 23.
And when it comes to doing business, I'm asking you to adopt a cautious mindset. In the words of President Reagan, when you're approached for introduction or a connection to a deal, trust but verify. I know you all have power over pension funds or the people that run them. As of its latest public filing, the Florida retirement system is invested in a company that in turn is invested in surveillance gear that the Chinese Communist Party uses to track more than 1 million Muslim minorities. California's pension fund, the largest public pension fund in the country, is invested in companies that supply the People's Liberation Army, that puts our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines at risk. And as is the case for many Chinese companies too, no Sarbanes-Oxley. Their books are not wide open. So it's difficult to know if the transaction that's being engaged in is transparent and fair and follows the rule of law. Now, all of these things may well be legal, but the question is, do they demonstrate good judgment and preserve America's national security. I want to urge vigilance on the local level, too. In the District of Columbia, there have been concerns raised that the new Metro cars manufactured by China could be vulnerable to cyber threats. So again, it's worth trusting but verifying there are federal officials prepared to help you work your way through these challenges when they arise. Don't make separate individual deals and agreements with China that undermine our national policy. I know none of you would do so intentionally. Let us help you make sure we're getting it right.
It's a great speech. I have tweeted out the entirety of it. Go to Hugh Hewitt on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter, especially my new friends in Pensacola. Tune in every single morning for 3 hours of the news you need, the analysis you must have. Say a little prayer for Walter Schaub that he gets over his anger problem. And don't forget, Justice Thomas created equal. Go to justicethomasmovie.com. That's justicethomasmovie.com. Created equal. Look, they're a sponsor of the show, but I love Justice Thomas. Michael Pack is a great filmmaker. You will love Created Equal. Clarence Thomas, in his own words. Take your kids, take your youth group, take yourself to see Created Equal. Clarence Thomas's own words. Go to justicethomasmovie.com to find out where. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Generalissimo. Talk to you all tomorrow on the next Hugh Hewitt Show.